Hi, welcome to Steelonthenet.com on YouTube. Today's topic is how to do a steel industry due diligence appraisal. The first question, of course, is why should one want to do a due diligence appraisal relating to steel? Well, in answer to that, it's generally an investor and typically a bank that requires such a study to be done. The phrase due diligence normally refers to an investigation of a business prior to a contract being signed. For the purpose of today's discussion, I'm really referring to a due diligence investigation of a steel business that tends to be done as part of a large investment. So if you are a bank and your steel client wants you to finance a $100 million investment in a new rolling mill, for example, you as the financier will typically require an independent team of steel experts to help prepare a due diligence study. Such an appraisal, which will usually spell out the market, technical, financial, and sometimes other issues relating to the proposed investment, so assisting you in determining the risk that is likely to be involved if you participate in the funding. So that explains why you might want to have some experts come to work on the due diligence investigation. Let's now answer the question, what does such a study normally consist of? Actually, there is no fixed answer to that particular question because each set of investment circumstances is generally different. Sometimes there is a particular technology or technology option that's involved that is particularly well suited to local raw material availability, for example. Sometimes price uncertainty arises as an important issue because of matters to do with import tariffs or changes to import tariffs. Competitor investment intentions may sometimes be very uncertain and introduce a lot of supply-side doubt with major impact on future market share calculations. This list of key issues can go on and on. However, it's usually fair to say that in the steel sector at least, a typical techno-commercial due diligence study will normally consist at a minimum of market, technical and financial appraisals. A study of that sort is likely to be presented as a written report of maybe 75 or 100 pages and is likely to be accompanied by a working spreadsheet model that describes the financial characteristics of the business in question. So let's now expand on each of these items in turn and consider in a little bit more detail the market, the technical and the financial aspects of the typical due diligence appraisal. We'll start with the market study. Now, the purpose of the market study is to project steel volumes and steel prices in order to help build a model of the future revenue stream. Normally, if we are undertaking a due diligence study for investment in product X in country Y, we would start with an appraisal of apparent demand today for all finished steel products in country Y. That level of demand would in turn be broken out into current demand for the main three product groups, or flat, long and tubular steel products. Within these groups, we would then specifically identify the demand for product X itself. No doubt we would then describe this demand a little further by identifying the production, import and export volumes that make up the structure of this demand. Understanding the supply side is of course important because that issue relates to competition. As part of the market study, we would therefore also seek to understand how production today maps out amongst the various competitors, including the assessment of competitor market shares. If different competitors serve different sub-markets of the relevant market for product X, we would probably want to describe the relevant market sub-segments to see if commercial opportunities might arise from realigning or better positioning the investment under consideration. Part of the competitor appraisal is also, however, likely to involve additionally estimating competitor production costs through a cost benchmarking type approach and some general deliberations concerning competitor strengths and weaknesses. Now, some of these matters are slightly beyond the scope of today's video broadcast. However, the important point to note is that these considerations will help to determine what market share the investment in question or business in question might be able or should be able to attain. Moving forward into the future, projecting demand forwards 10, 20 years hence by looking at matters such as the intensity of demand today and tomorrow is another important step. We normally take a look at that by thinking about per capita consumption in the territory in question and comparing that to per capita demand for steel in other parts of the world and thinking about how alignments are likely to take place. We do this also by thinking about probable changes in demand mix, looking at historic trends in different parts of the world. And these approaches together allow you to put forward a perspective on future steel demand, and particularly future demand for product X in country Y at some point in the future. One aspect in all of these discussions which I would particularly like to stress is that you will notice that everything I've said so far has been very much a market-led approach. We do not start with a capacity number when thinking about an investment. We do not start with a capacity number saying that this is the volume that we will produce, or production will be some very high proportion of this capacity number, such as 90%, assuming 90% capacity utilization. Rather, we start with a very factual description of prevailing steel demand and of the role our business might fulfill in serving this demand in terms of market share, and we drive the sales projections backwards in this manner. Therefore, we very much take a market-led approach, not a production-oriented approach, and that is an important distinction, please to bear in mind. Volumes are one issue which we've discussed. Prices, of course, are also important for determining future revenues. In our experience, one of the best starting points for understanding current prices is to analyse the recent trade statistics, which describe during recent months or quarters cross-border movements of steel in volume and value terms. These figures tend to give us a good handle on actual local or regional transaction prices. We would normally, however, also undertake field research, speaking to customers, interviewing customers, in order to understand the likely evolution of local steel prices from the customer perspective. A number of independent consultancies also publish for sale their own perspectives on medium-term steel price trends, and such reports, together with field research and analyses of trade data, really are altogether the approach that one uses for building the picture of the future price curve and revenue stream. Okay, that pretty much covers the market aspects. Let's now turn to technical evaluations in the steel industry due diligence investigation. A fairly good starting point in any technical evaluation really is to describe stage by stage the relevant plant and equipment, and to create a picture of material throughputs through the steel plant. Such a portrayal often also involves understanding the production capacity of each step in the production process, as well as the key performance indicators relating to each step in the manufacturing chain. Now, I would like to add some comments concerning the key performance indicators, or KPIs as they are often also called. Such KPIs take a variety of different forms. They can describe, for example, resource usage, e.g. kilowatt hours of electricity used per tonne of liquid steel produced in an electric arc furnace. KPIs can also describe material flow, such as through yields. So if I have 100 tonnes of billets rolled in a bar mill that produces 95 tonnes of bar, I have a 95% through yield. Similarly, KPIs can describe productivity issues, e.g. labour productivity. Here, one of the most common measures used is man hours per tonne. Such a list of KPIs can go on, and it can cover rolling mill speeds, it can cover quality issues, so prime versus non-prime production, it can cover consumables use, so for example, kilograms of refractory per tonne of steel, and so on. The KPIs are, however, an important part of the technical evaluation for two further reasons, which I would like to especially stress. First, most experts in steelmaking should usually, from a review of KPI data, be able to fairly quickly pinpoint parameter values that are unusual or odd, triggering further discussions and investigations. Secondly, many of the KPI values uncovered in this aspect of the due diligence investigation are likely to be of a special value in understanding the cost performance of the business, a matter we come back to shortly. In summary, however, a solid technical due diligence is one that really should give the reader of the due diligence report a good understanding of production capacity, of material flow, of production bottlenecks, of key KPIs by main process stage. A solid due diligence should also bring this all together by offering the reader a good understanding of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats of the production facilities, and this perspective should also extend to an understanding of future capital investment needs of the business. Infrastructure, utility and logistics issues should also be included in these evaluations, of course. Okay, we've probably also now summarised the main technical issues that should be looked at in the due diligence investigation. Let's now move to the financial evaluations. For a potential investor, the financial characteristics of the business in question may of course be the most important issue. One should not forget, however, that it's the market evaluations that are critical in determining the revenues, and it's technical evaluations that are critical in determining the costs through the KPIs, and that it's both market and technical issues that often determine, in large part, the capital expenditure and thus cash flows. So the point I'd like to stress is that it's not any one aspect of the technical due diligence that is all important. It is really all three aspects: the market, the technical and the financial issues that come together as a coherent whole that really represents the thorough way of undertaking and presenting the due diligence investigation. In practical terms, the usual starting point for a financial appraisal is a reconciliation of historic and financial statements, especially profitability. Thus, an understanding at micro level of sales volumes, of steel prices and unit costs, as well as of fixed costs, should allow the financial analyst to predict current year profits at macro level with some degree of accuracy. Similarly, with an understanding of the asset position at the last balance sheet date, and with certain assumptions concerning depreciation, capital purchases, working capital levels and so on, the financial analyst should also be able to predict the future balance sheet position. By the same token, with an understanding of the opening cash position and of expected trading and investment issues, one should also be able to predict the near-term cash position of the business. On this basis, the financial aspects of the due diligence appraisal should be able to both reconcile historic and current P&L, balance sheet and cash positions, and predict how these financial statements should look in the future. Related to these appraisals can of course be calculations of return on capital, return on equity, return on investment, calculations concerning the payback period, the internal rate of return and so on. And the experienced financial analyst is also likely to undertake a series of sensitivity analyses as part of the overall evaluation. We've spoken briefly about the market, technical and financial appraisals that generally make up due diligence appraisals relating to a steel industry investment. Other dimensions can be and often are included in such studies as well. And in our experience, environmental appraisals, that's looking at old environmental burdens and at current performance, are fairly common as well. Now, this is the case especially if large international banks are involved in due diligence work. This is because many of the big international banks are co-signatories to the so-called Equator Principles, which are a set of standards defined by the World Bank and the IFC, standards that must be pursued and followed when making steel industry investments. For that reason, the big international banks often require environmental appraisal to be included in a due diligence study. Human resource issues, particularly recruitment and training, technology selection, in some cases involving more modern technologies such as Corex, plant and equipment sourcing in order to save capital investment, particularly if one can source material rather than from Western Europe, for example, from India or China, discussing also the consequences of sourcing in different parts of the world. Such perspectives are often also part and parcel of the normal due diligence investigation relating to a new investment. In summary, this short video has explained why one might want a due diligence appraisal of a steel plant and what this comprises. We have also discussed how market and technical deliberations feed into an overall financial appraisal, but also noted that other matters such as environmental issues can be an important aspect of the overall investigation. I hope that this review has been helpful. If you are looking for assistance with a due diligence investigation, why not contact us at www.Steelonthenet.com. You can also email us at info@Steelonthenet.com or call us on +44 775 149 0885. My name is Andrzej Kotas and I am the CEO of Steelonthenet.com. Thank you very much for listening.